Welcome to Lady E's Dark Tales. In tonight's bone-chilling Halloween saga, we delve into the harrowing ordeal of a teenage girl whose cozy movie night transforms into a fight for survival against an unexpected intruder. Dim the lights, clutch your favorite plushie toy, and make sure that your doors and windows are locked, for you're about to experience a tale of terror that will make you think twice about staying home alone. Prepare yourselves for a heart-pounding journey through the shadows of suburban horror in a story I call I Survived a Halloween Home Invasion.
The basement door flew open with a bang, and I tumbled down the stairs, landing in a heap on the cold concrete floor. Pain shot through my body as I struggled to catch my breath. In the dim light, I could make out a pair of heavy boots descending the stairs, each step echoing ominously in the musty air. My heart raced as I looked up, my eyes meeting the empty gaze of a stark white mask. The figure loomed over me, raising a gleaming hunting knife. As the blade slashed downward, I squeezed my eyes shut and... Hold on, let me introduce myself. My name is Erica, and this is how my Halloween night turned into a real-life horror story. But to understand how I ended up in that basement, we need to go back to the beginning. I was 15 years old at the time, a shy bookworm trying to survive high school in the small town of Brooksville, Florida. It was October 31st, 1999, a night that would forever change my life. As I scanned the VHS collection in my living room, I remember muttering to myself that The Exorcist was too scary and settled on something lighter. The Blob. I let out a shrill, hollow laugh that echoed through the empty house. My parents were next door at the Smiths couple's costume party, dressed as Janet Jackson and Busta Rhymes from the What's It Gonna Be music video. I hugged myself, trying to ignore the goosebumps prickling my bare arms. The old furnace hummed, struggling to combat the autumn chill that had settled into the creaky floorboards. Outside, bare branches scratched against the windows like skeletal fingers. It was the kind of night that stirred something primal in your gut, an ancestral fear of the dark. My plan was to binge on mini chocolate bars while watching scary movies. Nothing too frightening, though. No spinning heads or pea soup vomit for me, thank you very much. Just spooky enough to quicken my pulse. Lauryn Hill's Everything is Everything played softly on the radio, a stark contrast to the eerie atmosphere outside. I threw a bag of popcorn in the microwave and browsed the VHS tapes. That's when it happened. The power abruptly cut out, plunging the house into darkness. I forced another shrill laugh, trying to ignore the goosebumps now prickling on the back of my neck. I told myself not to freak out, that it was just a blown fuse. I crept through the pitch-black halls on trembling legs, my senses straining for any sound. My hands fumbled inside the junk drawer for a flashlight. The thin beam illuminated dusty heirlooms and family photos that now seemed sinister in the shadows. As I made my way toward the basement, my flip-flops scuffing against the hardwood, I couldn't ignore the primal chill clawing up my spine. Something wasn't right. The smell of musty air and the sound of my own ragged breathing filled my senses. The old wooden stairs groaned under my weight. Cobwebs brushed my face, and I jumped, stifling a yelp. The dank basement reeked of mold and mildew. My hands shook as I flipped each breaker switch back and forth to no avail. The power was still out. That's when I heard it, a scrape like a footstep on the concrete floor behind me. I whirled around, my flashlight beam darting wildly. I called out, my voice wavering, but only silence rang in my ears. I told myself it was just my imagination, but my hands were clammy as I rushed up the creaky stairs and locked the basement door behind me. As I crossed the living room, lightning flashed outside, illuminating a figure standing in the backyard. I gasped, stumbling backwards. A man wearing a stark white mask stood staring right at me through the sliding glass door. I dove down, crawling over to peek out between the blinds. He was gone. Heart hammering, I rushed to check the locks on the front and back doors with trembling fingers. Panic rising, I hurried back up the stairs to my bedroom, seeking the false comfort of familiar surroundings. That's when I heard the crash of shattering glass. He was inside. My skin prickled as I heard shuffling and loud sounds coming from downstairs. Then I heard the creaking sounds from the staircase. The intruder was right outside my room. As I huddled and tried to barricade myself in the corner of my closet, I heard him methodically searching each room, his heavy footsteps getting closer and closer. The floorboards creaked under his weight, each sound amplifying my terror. I held my breath, praying he would pass by my room. But deep down, I knew he wouldn't. He was here for me. The door to my bedroom slowly opened, the hinges groaning in protest. Through the slats in my closet door, I could see his massive silhouette filling the doorway. The stark white mask seemed to glow in the darkness. As I saw a gleaming hunting knife in his hand, I realized that this Halloween night was about to become a real-life horror story, and I was trapped in the middle of it. My heart raced as I pressed myself back deeper into my closet. Huddled among the shoes and clothes, I covered my mouth to stifle my panicked breaths. What did he want from me? Who was he? And how would I escape this nightmare? The closet door slid open with a creak, revealing his hulking figure framed in the doorway. The light from his flashlight danced across my terrified face. I whimpered, my voice cracking with panic as I pleaded with him to take anything he wanted and leave me alone. The masked man said nothing. He just stood there, breathing heavily behind the stark white of his mask. As he reached towards me with a black-gloved hand, I reacted on pure instinct, lashing out with my foot. My heel connected sharply with his knee, and he grunted in pain, stumbling back. Seizing the moment, I leapt out of the closet and raced for the stairs. But my escape was short-lived. His hand lashed out, fingers clamping around my ankle. My breath hitched as my chin hit the floor, teeth biting into my tongue. My mouth flooded with the metallic tang of blood, while my body was dragged across the carpet. The man's fingers dug into my ankle as he pulled me towards him. I thrashed wildly, clawing at his wrists. The struggle was violent, with me twisting in desperation while he tried to maintain his grip. With a final wrenching kick, I broke free. He lost his balance, tumbling backwards with a sickening thud that echoed through the house. Gasping, I staggered to my feet and down the stairs, my pulse roaring in my ears. My skin prickled as I heard shuffling and creaking on the staircase. He was coming for me. I darted to the phone in the living room, my fingers hovering over 911. But as I went to press the final digit, a cold hand clamped over my face. I shrieked as his grip tightened around my mouth and my nose, cutting off my air. My vision tunneled as I fought for breath. His voice was coarse, hot and foul against my face. I remember him telling me I was a naughty girl and that it was time to teach me some manners. The words sent chills down my spine, each syllable dripping with malice. Dragging my body across the living room, he flung open the basement door and hurled me down the steps. Gravity claimed me in its cruel grasp as I tumbled, landing in a jumbled heap on the concrete floor, my bones aching from the impact. Footsteps echoed from above, each one a hammer blow to my throbbing skull. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to get up and run, but my leg was hurting and no other part of my body would respond. The trauma overrode my primal survival instincts. I was trapped. As he reached the bottom of the stairs, I got a clearer view of his face, or lack thereof. The featureless white mask reflected the dim basement light, creating an eerie glow. Hot tears trailed down my cheeks, the impact of my hopeless situation crushing me. No one knew he was here. No one was coming to save me. He brandished a gleaming hunting knife, trailing it lightly across my cheek. He spoke again, his voice a chilling whisper. I recall him saying he had brought extras, gesturing to the array of blades strapped to his belt. He told me we were going to have so much fun. I screamed, shutting my eyes tight, bracing for the pain as the knife slashed downward. In desperation, I kicked out with my uninjured leg catching his ankle. The sudden impact threw off his balance. Instead of the searing pain I expected, a choked cry echoed through the basement, followed by a heavy thud. My eyes flew open. In the dim light, I saw him clutching his bleeding hand. He had stumbled and missed his mark, the knife slicing into his own flesh instead. Now was my chance. He lunged for me again, his wild eyes sparkling with malice behind the mask. But this time, I was ready. I had spotted a rusted iron pipe lying against the wall when he had thrown me down here. My hands closed around it just as he reached for me, and I swung with all the strength I had left. The pipe connected with a sickening crack against his temple. He swayed for a moment, then collapsed, a dark pool spreading rapidly under his head. I sat there, my body vibrating with the shock and adrenaline of the encounter, the cold pipe still in my trembling grip. Had I killed him? The thought both terrified and relieved me. Cautiously, I nudged his still form with the end of the pipe. No movement. The silence in the basement was deafening, broken only by my ragged breathing and the distant howl of the wind outside. Slowly, I rose to my feet, the pipe still clutched in my grip. Step by painful step, I climbed the stairs and, against all hope, turned the doorknob. It was locked. He had locked it from the outside when he threw me down there. I banged on it, screaming and pleading for someone to hear me, to come and save me. But as I beat against the door, a fresh wave of terror swept over me. My gut twisted as I realized the true horror of my situation. I was trapped in the basement, alone with an attacker who could still be alive. The darkness was amplifying my terror, every shadow seeming to hide another threat. Was this it? Was this how I was to die? Alone in the dark with no one to hear my cries for help? The morbid reality swam before me as I slumped against the door, my cries for help echoing through the empty house unanswered. And then I heard it, a groan. He was waking up. The realization was paralyzing. Here I was, locked in this dank tomb with a sadistic madman. I slumped against the locked door. Fear was clogging my throat. But then, in the pitch darkness, instinct and survival bloomed. I couldn't just lay down and die. I refused. With the pipe gripped tightly in my hands, I began to strike the door. Each blow echoed in the empty basement, a grim chorus on repeat. I imagined my parents finding me, another visceral addition to the ever-growing statistics of victims. No, I couldn't be a victim. I had to fight for survival. The air grew thick with dust and the metallic tang of blood. My arms ached, muscles screaming with each swing, but I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. The door creaked and splintered, a sliver of hope in the darkness. Then a sound froze my blood. Another groan. He was getting up. Panic surged through me, lending strength to my battered body. I swung the pipe with renewed vigor, desperation fueling each blow. Wood cracked and splintered, a symphony of destruction accompanying my frenzied efforts. I heard him stir behind me, his labored breathing growing louder. Time was running out. In a final burst of adrenaline-fueled strength, I rammed the pipe into the weakened wood. The door gave way with a resounding crack, shards of wood exploding outward. As I clambered through the broken door, I felt his fingers brush my ankle. I kicked back blindly, hearing a satisfying crunch and a howl of pain. I didn't look back. I burst into the living room, the familiar surroundings now alien and threatening in the darkness. My eyes darted wildly, searching for an escape route. The front door was too far. The windows were an option, but the glass... I hesitated for a split second. That moment of indecision cost me dearly. A weight slammed into me from behind, driving me to the floor. The impact knocked the wind from my lungs. I gasped, struggling to breathe as I felt his weight pressing down on me, his hands wrapped around my throat, squeezing. Black spots danced in my vision as I clawed at his fingers, struggling to break his grip. My lungs burned, screaming for air. This was it. This was how I would die. I remembered thinking to myself, no, not like this. With the last of my strength, I reached out, my fingers closing around something solid on the nearby coffee table. I didn't think. I swung. The heavy brass candlestick connected with a sickening thud. His grip loosened. I swung again and again until his weight slumped off me, motionless. I lay there, gulping in precious air, my entire body trembling. The house was silent except for my ragged breathing and the steady tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Tick, tick, tick. Each second was a reminder that I was alive. I had survived. Slowly, painfully, I dragged myself to my feet. My body was a canvas of bruises and cuts, and each movement a lesson in agony, but I was alive. I stumbled to the phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. As I waited for help to arrive, I sank to the floor, my back against the wall, eyes fixed on the motionless form of my attacker. I didn't know if he was dead or merely unconscious. I didn't care. I just knew it was over. I couldn't move. I didn't want to take my eyes off of him. I thought about running next door to get my parents, but I was afraid to leave. I thought about all the horror movies where the victims left only to return to find the killer gone. No, I couldn't leave. I don't know how long I sat there trembling before I heard the wail of sirens approaching. Time seemed to blur, reality distorting like a nightmare. The night erupted into a cacophony of wailing sirens and frenzied activity as officers swarmed my house. The police took me outside. All my neighbors were out. My parents rushed towards me, their faces drained of color as they clung to me, apologizing for not being there. Paramedics arrived soon after, tending to my bruises and cuts with detached professional care. I watched as an indistinct figure on a gurney was rolled out of my house. The ominous sheet covering it fueled my worst fears. I shivered despite the paramedics' blankets wrapped tightly around me. In the aftermath, I learned the intruder had survived. The police later informed me that my attacker was a transient criminal with a chilling history of home invasions and murder. The stark reality shook me to the core and brought up even more chilling questions. Why had he targeted me? I later learned he would break into random houses to steal, but he was always prepared to attack and even kill. The randomness of it all, that it could have been anyone, that it was mere chance that put me in his path, was almost more terrifying than the attack itself. Post-trauma, my house no longer felt like home. Every creaking floorboard and every shadow on the wall rekindled fears. My parents tried to console me, telling me I was brave and that I had defended myself, but the cautious side glances between hushed apologies told me more. For weeks after, I was plagued by nightmares of that man returning to finish what he started. I'd wake up screaming, soaked in sweat, feeling just as trapped and terrified as that night in the basement. Slowly, the nightmares faded, but my sense of security was forever shaken. One night, I woke to my parents' muffled sobs seeping through the thin walls of our home. Through the crack of their ajar door, I caught fragments of their guilt-ridden conversation. They blamed themselves for leaving me alone, but I knew the blame resided with the monster who had violated our home and attempted to claim my life. The experience affected every aspect of my life. I struggled with trust, jumping at every unexpected sound. Relationships became difficult. The thought of being vulnerable around others filled me with dread. Even years later, I found myself constantly checking locks, installing security systems, and always looking over my shoulder. Even after all these years, the echo of that Halloween night still haunts me. I always make sure to tell others to lock their windows and doors, though I still struggle with my own feelings of vulnerability. But through the trauma, I learned I had resilience caged within me. I was not the frightened bookworm anymore. I was a survivor, and I refused to be a victim. As I look back on that terrifying night, I'm left with a chilling final image, the stark white mask of my attacker, illuminated by the dim basement light. It's a reminder of the horror I faced and the strength I discovered within myself. A reminder that evil can wear many faces, or no face at all. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the wind whispers through the trees, I catch myself wondering, how many evil people are out there, waiting in the shadows? How many more innocent lives will be forever changed by a chance encounter with the darkness that lurks just beyond our doors? After all, evil doesn't need an invitation. Sometimes it just needs a mask and a glass door.
And so, my beloved audience, we've reached the chilling conclusion of tonight's tale. A seemingly ordinary Halloween night turned into a nightmare, reminding us that sometimes the real monsters aren't just in the movies we watch, but can be lurking among the costumed strangers on our streets. Our young heroine's brush with evil has left me questioning, how safe are we really when opening our doors to unknown faces, and what darkness might be hiding behind their masks? Now, I turn to you, my brave viewers. Have you ever experienced something unsettling on Halloween night? An encounter with a stranger that made your skin crawl? If so, share your spine-tingling experiences in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more blood-curdling narratives. Until next time, sweet screams, my darlings. And remember, when the doorbell rings on Halloween night, think twice before answering. You never know what sinister intent might be concealed behind a stranger's mask.